Welcome everybody to the first episode of You Gotta Hear This. This is a very exciting new podcast venture. I'm joined by my friend Mike Monzitta.
Hello, everyone.
Greg Urquhart. And Joe, I always forget which real last name you use and which. Boynton. Okay, that's the one. Boynton. All right.
I believe it's Amanda Murley.
It does say Amanda Murley on your screen.
It does. I'm using my wife's account.
That's fine. So we started, Mike and I, a long time ago. It was probably less than a year ago, but it seems like a lifetime. We started a version of this podcast, an audio version. And the idea was that we would have a guest on every week, and each person would pick a song and that they've been listening to, that they've been into, and we'd all discuss each other's songs and play them on the podcast. We got 3 episodes done, and I didn't really follow through on it, I guess. And then the pandemic hit, and then I really stopped following through. And but what came of that was 2 of our first guests were Greg and Joe, and we started a text thread after that and continued to discuss music. And we eventually kind of got into this routine of kind of bringing up a topic, and then we'd all discuss it on the text thread. And then after a little bit of time, we decided, why don't we just do this on a video call and record it and put it out there? So that's what we're doing, and we'll all see how it goes together today.
Nice.
Awesome.
I think it's a great idea.
Very happy to be here. I think we're all very insightful. And I think sort of on that note, since, and this is something I've always been interested in, well, should we say what the topic is for the first episode of You Gotta Hear This?
Yeah. The topic for the first episode is perfect albums. So each of us is going to choose our perfect album, and we'll all discuss it. And the rules, I guess, are you really gotta make a case for your album, and then we all get to weigh in on whether we agree or disagree.
And it is perfect album, not so much our favorite album, more so perfect as far as like composition, like you can listen to it from beginning to end and not skip a song or not like a song.
Exactly.
Because some of my favorite albums, I do skip songs.
Right. And so I also, I don't know what other criteria you guys have, but I know for myself, I also feel like in addition to it not having a bad song on it, I needed to have that experience from like the first song to the last one where you kind of feel like you've been on a journey throughout by the time you get to the end. Like, because some albums just have a collection of really good songs, and that's good, but it doesn't have that feeling. So to me, for an album to be perfect, it needs that as well.
That's a great point, and that's a really good segue to a question that I wanted to ask you guys. We're on the call here, and we've got two world-class musicians, those being myself and Greg. But I wanted to ask Joe and John, since you guys have actually put together albums, and I would consider Tell All Your Friends a near perfect album, but I'm so interested to know from people who have literally put together albums, how do you compose an album? How do you decide what songs are going to go on the album? How do you decide what order the songs are going to go in? What's the thought process behind that? I'm super interested to know.
Joe, you want to take that first, and then I'll follow up?
I would say, so for us, we would write a ton of songs, way more than we need for the album that we're working on. And then we would go from there and just kind of pin them against each other and say, you know, it's a lot of steering with your gut on which songs are going to make the cut, which ones are going to make the album. And that's definitely done collectively as the band in front of, you know, in the studio. And then, at least for us. And then we always mapped ours like a mixtape. Like I grew up making mixtapes from when I was 14. I'm still making playlists today for friends and family members. And my band always decided that the order of the tracks and which ones would go where based on that, and we'd have a few different iterations on how the album would line up. But it's really just staring with your gut. It's the best way to describe it. You kind of just know, like for us, it was The Answer Comes in Time on Listen to Forgive. We knew that was the last song, and for Stay Home, we knew that Stay Home was going to be the first song just based on the intro of the song. So I'd say the intro, for us, the intro of a song helps decide what song's going to be at the beginning, and the outro of a lot of our songs decided which songs were going to be the last on the album. And you just kind of keep that flow. You got to zoom out and look at the whole album as one big song, and how to construct it from there.
Yeah, that's very well said. And the mixtape thing was actually something I was going to say.
Me too.
As well.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit older than you, so I don't know if you had this experience of the actual mixtape, and where you either have like a thing with 2 tape decks, or you somehow like rig 2 machines together so that you can play something from one player and then record it on a tape. But like that was my first experience with mixtapes, and it really did teach me how to kind of think about the way that a playlist was progressing, and like the ending of one song into the beginning of the next one, and then like kind of the peaks and valleys of, upbeat songs and slower songs. And that was that is, I agree. I still look at putting an album together in a very similar way.
You kind of just bookend and be like, this is the start, this is the end, and then you fill in the rest.
Yeah.
For the most part. Nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was going to say, I remember back in 2002 when I was putting together, how you put your CD and you burn the CD. But it's all about the transition. It's all about the intro of one song and then the outro of the previous song, and how those get together. That's awesome.
If you want to get lazy with it, sometimes I would just listen to the end of the song in the beginning, not even listen to the whole songs. Like,
yeah.
But that's the lazy man's way out.
Are people still, what do you guys think about the state of the album nowadays? Are people still listening to albums from start to finish, or do you think it's more of a Spotify playlist, downloading songs on iTunes or what have you, or just asking Alexa to play your one favorite song? Or do you think people are still listening to albums from start to finish these days?
Man, I don't know. I don't know what the kids are doing. But I know most people our age, the album is still very important. Even like a new band, or an older band putting out a new album, that it's very important, the listening experience from start to finish. But I don't know if you guys have any more knowledge into what the kids think about albums these days.
I mean, albums are selling. I mean, vinyl had one of its best years, I think I read, like in forever. So people are still doing it. I think that helps the resurgence of actually listening to the album, because trying to skip a song on a vinyl record is awful.
It's difficult.
So you're forced to listen to it as it was meant to be listened to.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's always been that thing of like more like pop groups, or, even the more popular bands where the focus is on singles.
Mm-hmm.
And
EPs. There's a lot of EPs that come out.
Yeah, that's true. That was a cool thing they used to. I don't know if anyone really does it anymore, but you remember back in the day, like a band would put out an EP before their album, and it would usually have like 1 or 2 songs from the album, and then like a few B-sides, and it was sort of like put out there to get people excited for the album, which I always thought that was cool.
Yeah, I remember Anthrax did that, and the whole album, it was called Attack of the Killer Bees, and it had the Public Enemy Anthrax collaboration for Bring the Noise, which was fantastic.
Was that on the Judgment Night soundtrack?
No, the Judgment Night soundtrack was all rap rock collaborations, and it was fantastic. And the theme song went like this, Judgment Night. It was fantastic. I don't know. That was one of my favorite albums in high school. You can edit that part out, but I leave it in. Leave it in.
It was a classic.
It was.
Yeah, man. I was into it.
Nice.
Well, let's get into it. What are your guys' favorite? What do you guys consider the perfect album? Who wants to kick it off?
Okay. So for mine, I had 4 questions that led to my pick. Question 1 was, can this album heavily impact the way a listener or a musician perceives music? For me, this album absolutely did. 2 was, is this album innovative within its genre at the time it was released? To answer that, for me, without a doubt, I believe this album was ahead of its time. 3, how does this album hold up today? In my opinion, very well. I listen to this record pretty frequently throughout the year. And how fun is it? This album is really fun. This album is by a band called Mock Orange. It's called Nines and Sixes. It was released September 1st, 1998 on Lobster Records out of Santa Barbara, California. Mock Orange is from Evansville, Indiana. They formed in 1993. They're a 4-piece band. The genre, I would say, is post-hardcore, emo, indie. It was produced by the guitarist of Lagwagon, Sean Dewey, and members of the band helped produce it as well. Apologize for the train going by right now if you can hear it.
Not that bad.
What was the name of the album?
It's like Brad Pitt's
Nines
House 7.
I know. It really is just down right by the train. So
what was the name of the album?
Orange, and the album is called Nines and Sixes. And I found this band while my band was recorded in our first EP and full length by my friend Jay Maz. He was in a hardcore band called The Feeder, and he has Getaway Recording in Wakefield, Massachusetts, and he works for Reverb.com. So I talked to him this week, thanking him for showing me the band, showing my band this band, because it dramatically affected us as musicians. And yeah, when I first heard this record, when I first heard Nines and Sixes, the album was already 10 years old. Now the album's 22 years old. The audience for this record and this band was definitely weird music for college kids at the time. Let's see why I picked it. Nines and Sixes is an intense emotional ride from beginning to end. It's catchy and it's intelligent. It handles polyrhythmic stuff really well. The band from front to back, you can tell they're given 110% creatively and performance-wise. The instruments lock up very well. It almost feels like it's coming from one person. Feels like it's coming from one brain.
Like Voltron.
Yeah. And this is their first album. I believe they had one EP called First EP, and then they have this one. And I'm a sucker for great riffs. This album brings all the riffs, everyone. You're just constantly surprised by, oh man, like this riff. Constantly, they never seems to run out of creativity throughout the whole thing. I would describe the songs as they drive, they burst, they swell, they crash, they disintegrate. They do all the things that great songs do. You'll basically have certain parts of the song, you'll have a wall of sound, and then it will just stop into one instrument and then go back into a wall, which I love. First time I ever experienced that as a listener was listening to The Who when I was a kid. My dad showed me The Who. That was the first time I experienced that sort of effect. The album overall, the vibe of the album, it reminds me of driving in a city at night. Like almost like certain albums that have really impacted me over the years, I have listened to in the van, on the road, or on a road trip with friends. And it always brings me back to that moment of in the passenger seat, windshield, it could be raining and the lights of the city are glaring through the windshield. And this album perfectly puts that visual in my head when I listen to it, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
Re-listenability, 10 out of 10. It's very unpredictable. I'd say my favorite tracks on the album are the first track, Growing Crooked, 5th track, Paper, and then the 7th track, Poster Child. I actually counted out, I had a lot of time in my hands because I work from home. So I counted out every time the album made me go, oh man, like in my head, like, oh man. So I call them oh mans. That's what I was calling them. So
I really appreciate your commitment to this podcast.
Yeah.
You have done a fantastic job of describing this. I cannot wait. I'm about to leave the show and go listen to this album. You've done an amazing job of selling it. But please tell me all of your oh man moments.
All Man Moments. My favorite track, Growing Crooked. I got 9 All Mans. It went from 9. Second track, I only had 4. Third track, I had 6. Fourth track, I had 5. Other second favorite song, Paper, I had 11 All Man Moments. Went to 5. Poster Child had 11. Dictionary, which I wasn't sure was one of my favorite songs. This week I realized it is. I had 7. And then, yeah, so the average Aw Mans per song is a 6.8. 6.8. My brain listening to this record goes, oh, man.
The only thing I can think of when you said Aw Man Moments was, I think we're all about the same age. I don't know if you guys ever had that Adam Sandler comedy album, They're All Gonna Laugh at You, where he's peeing, and he's like, oh, man. Oh, man. And then he keeps peeing. And he's like, oh, man. And the whole song is just 3 minutes of him peeing. He's just like, oh, man. Oh, no. Oh, man. And then he stops peeing. And he's like, whew. And then he goes, oh, man. But I'm glad.
Exact same thing. This is exactly the same.
No, that's awesome. I've never heard of this band, but you sold it so well that I really want to listen to this band.
Yeah, I think the Aw Man rating should be something that the music critics could integrate. You know? Instead of a scale of stars or thumbs up, thumbs down, you give it how many Aw Mans did it get?
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I really want to hear this band now. I really want to hear this album.
Yeah, anybody? I'm only familiar with like the name of the band, so I don't really know much about them. Greg, do you know anything about them?
I don't. You said they were from Indiana?
Evansville, Indiana. It came out in I believe they started in 1993, but this record came out in 1998, and it was their first full length. I love it. Let me see here.
Yeah, I've never heard of him. I will definitely listen for sure. Yep. I hope I get as many oh man moments as you do.
So ready for this? Amounts of oh man. 36 minutes. In 36 minutes of the runtime of this album, I oh manned 76 times.
Wow.
That's more oh mans than most people have in a year.
Wait, 9s and 6s. I think it's a perfect album. Check it out.
How many? Who would you maybe compare it to for a similar sound, or are they on their own little plateau?
I would say it's for fans of Jets to Brazil, Sunny Day Real Estate, Jawbreaker, Lifetime, maybe After Drive-In. But yeah, I love this record. It's just a recap. It's an intense ride, beginning to end. It's innovative, catchy, and intelligent. Riffs for days.
You turned me on to Jets to Brazil. I like them.
Yeah, I love them. I love Jets to Brazil.
I think this is the great thing about this show, and kind of about the original show, and kind of about the group text that kind of spawned the show, is that I have never heard of this band, and now I'm super excited to listen to them.
Nice.
Yeah, that's everything I got. I love this record, so thanks.
Are they still around or no?
Yeah, they never broke up. They just put out a new record. I haven't listened to it yet. What is the name of it?
And this one came out in 98 or 96?
This one came out in 1998, and their new record, let me see here. Let's see.
So I'll ask you this, Joe, while you search for the information. So I've found this thing especially with kind of like punk rock, or more like hardcore, post-hardcore bands, that like sometimes if you didn't catch it at the right time in your life, like at the right age, it can be like hard to get into the band, like when you're older or just at a different place in your life. Like, do you feel like it's one of those, or do you feel like it's one where you could come in like at any point in your life and still like be moved by it?
Any point. Yeah. It's very impressive. I'm definitely gonna be listening to this record. I like I said, like this record was 10 years old when I first heard it. It wasn't in the group of bands that I was listening to at the time that I was like, oh, this new band. This was presented to me like you don't know about this, you should, like, from an older musician that I looked up to a lot. And he was basically like, the kids got to know, here's this record.
Right.
And we were hook, line, and sinker, like, absolutely. And the record after this, called The Record Play, I think it's just as good. It's not as much of a flow of a mixtape as this one, and I think that's why this one's ahead of it. But some of my favorite songs by this band are on the album after this one. But their new record, it's an EP. It's called the Bridge EP, and it's on Bedfire Records. It just came out this year. I'm really excited to check that out.
That might have to be a potential future episode, is bands that we missed the boat on, but now love.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Topic.
That's a great idea. And John, I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel like that's going to play into my pick as well, is catching it at the right time. If you were to catch it later, it might not be as awesome as it was if you caught it when it first came out. But we'll get to that.
That's why my guess for yours was Cracked Rear View, but I was
I wanted so bad for my pick to be Cracked. For the record, my favorite album of all time is, like, unironically, Cracked Rear View by Hootie and the Blowfish. And I really wanted it to be my perfect album for this show, but I listened to it and I have to reluctantly give it a 9 out of 10. I can't give it the 10 out of 10.
What was it that took that point off?
There's one miss. There's one miss on the album, and it's deep. I think it's like song number 10 or song number 9. I can't remember, but there's just one miss that just doesn't do it for me.
Interesting.
What about Fairweather Johnson? What are your feelings on Fairweather
Johnson? Is not a perfect album by any means, but it's the secret best Hootie album. If for those in the know, for the Hootie heads out there,
the Hootsters.
Fairweather Johnson. Oh, Tuckerstown? Mwah.
Yeah, see, I was joking about that yesterday on the text message that real Hootie fans love Fairweather Johnson, and basing that on absolutely nothing. But the reason I did think it could be an actual thing is because a lot of times when a band has like a really popular album, there's always those people who are like, the one that's not popular is the one. That's the cool album. That's the one. And I bet there's even Hootie and the Blowfish fans like that.
Yeah.
Which album has the line, "The Dolphins Make Me Cry"?
That's
Cracked Rear View.
Cracked Rear View.
For the longest time, especially as a kid when I first heard Hootie and the Blowfish, I thought he was saying that the dolphin, like the species of
the animal,
made him cry. And I didn't make the connection of the
They're so majestic. They're so
really
water.
Really like sea life. This is great.
And so you watch the music video, I guess.
If you watch the music video, you see Dan Marino.
Yes, they make it.
A Miami Dolphins football player. Yeah.
Oh man,
nice.
That's
awesome.
So good. That album came out right when I went to the Cracked Review. Was the height of its popularity my freshman year of college, and I went to school at University of South Carolina in Columbia, where Hootie and the Blowfish is from. So just the two. It was like when Hulk Hogan wrestled the Ultimate Warrior in WrestleMania 6. The perfect collision.
Perfect storm. Yeah. Nice.
All right, Greg.
All right.
I think it's your turn.
I'm so curious to know what yours is, because we did a thing where we didn't want to tell each other. Like, we don't know what albums that we're picking.
That's right. Yeah, we maybe should have said that.
Yeah, and you sent a screenshot, and it was like number one on UK top 100, but then it was like number one on the dance.
Yeah, that does confuse me.
Okay.
I mean, I understand, because a lot of the songs are a little bit like, you get out and do one of those little dance things. So this band is also, the singer is also from another band that John's friend Andy Sprague is a diehard fan of, Blur.
Oh yeah.
So
okay.
My perfect album is a band called the Gorillaz.
Oh yeah.
Their sophomore album, which is Demon Days, which came out in May of 2005. And it's pretty perfect as a sophomore album, because when they first came out with their first album, which was self-titled, in I think it was like 2001 or maybe or 2000, they were more of like a gimmick band because of the whole cartoon thing. Nobody knew that there was actually, I mean, people knew there were people, but they never showed like Damon Albarn or and Jamie Hewlett, who's the artist. He also did all the Tank Girl stuff I don't know if you.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He drew all those comics and stuff like that. He's an amazing artist. But so after the first album came out, everyone's like, yeah, great. It's another gimmick band. And then there's a little bit of a relation to Blur songs at the beginning of that album, I feel. And then it turned into like this whole new sound towards the end. But with Demon Days, I think they really just put their foot down and be like, no, this is what we're doing. And we're going to knock everyone's socks off because it's unbelievable. And like this album was produced by Danger Mouse. Dan the Automator did the first one. I didn't know much about Dan the Automator, but I looked at his producer credentials, and the only band I recognized was Head Automatica. He did their debut album,
really?
which I didn't know. And then Danger Mouse is obviously pretty respected in the music biz. The one thing the Gorillaz do, they did it on this album, I think might have been like the first time they really jumped into it, is a lot of collaboration work. They're known for that for some reason. They just like to get guests on a lot of their songs. So this one, like De La Soul was on the album. MF Doom, I think Joe's familiar with him.
Yeah.
Ike Turner plays the piano. Booty Brown of Farside's on it, which is pretty great. And Dennis Hopper, the actor, he actually he narrates a parable at the beginning of a song, which pretty much closes out the album for the next two songs.
That was Dennis Hopper?
Yeah.
That's
Fire coming out of a monkey's head. Yep.
Yeah, I know.
True romance
the
fame.
narration.
Dennis Hopper of true romance fame.
Yeah, pretty much like the last four songs is the greatest album ending transition I've ever heard. There's like there's choirs involved. There's really, really deep lyrics. I did do some Wikipedia research, but as far as meaning it,
books on the internet.
Yeah. As far as like meaning of the album, Damon Albarn just figured it was like a journey through the night, and like each song is dealing with one's own personal demons. So it's from beginning to end, it's a nonstop, just same story, just different like chapters. So it flows very, very well. Some of the main singles that came out were Feel Good Inc. There's that song. There's Dare. There is Dirty Harry. El Mañana, which is a unbelievable song. And like Mike, you mentioned that with the charts, it was #1 in the UK, #6 on the US billboards when it came out, #1 on the top dance electronic, which is strange. #6 on the top rock albums in the US. And I think the peak point for year end in the UK was 2005. It hit #5, which is pretty cool. Platinum across the board, like 5 times platinum in Ireland, 2 times in the US, and I think 6 times in the UK platinum, which platinum's better than gold, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Platinum is $1 million.
Yeah, so they've sold a good bit. And out of like all their discography, I think this one came out in 2005. They didn't put one out again until 2010, which is Plastic Beach. For the Gorillaz fans in the world, there's always like the big debate, like which is the best one. It's either Demon Days or Plastic Beach. I tend to go towards Plastic Beach. I'm sorry, Demon Days.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Right there.
The story is great. The reception for it was great. And just the whole thing, like a lot of bands struggle with their sophomore album, but they clearly did not. They just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
And I think it opened up their doors because Plastic Beach, they had a lot more collaborators on it. And the thing with Damon Albarn, he doesn't do like top 10 like current artists or musicians. He goes like pretty rogue for a lot of his like guest appearances on songs and stuff like that. So like he went anywhere from like Snoop Dogg on Plastic Beach to some singer, like female, her name's Little Dragon, which is a song called Empire Ants, which is amazing. And then most recently they put out an album called Song Machine, which was pretty much because of the pandemic. So every month from like March or April, they were putting out a new song, and every song's got a new guest artist on it. And like it ranges from like people I've never heard of to people like Elton John, St. Vincent. There's a song with Beck, which is incredible, which I sent you guys in the
that was a great song
in the text. Yeah, so he's got his street cred for sure, Damon Albarn. The cartoon thing is just a whole nother side of it. Like I've seen them.
I like how they age. Don't the
They
cartoon
do.
characters age
There's a
years?
huge
Unlike
like
Charlie Brown, who is still the same.
Unlike all cartoons, which usually don't age. That's great.
Like
there's a huge lore behind them. Like there's stories that go along with each album and each music video, and it's what they do is pretty great. And like Jamie Hewlett's a godsend with art. Like he is.
My favorite one is the Juggler.
The which one?
Juggler.
Juggalo?
My favorite one.
Yeah. What's
Sorry.
the
I thought that was funny. I don't know. Is that a different band?
so they and then with
You can edit that out.
For a second, I actually thought one of the cartoon characters was meant to be a juggalo, and they like went really
Like the
deep.
juggler.
But
I
I
know which
probably
one that
thought
would be.
way more about that than I should have.
but then you got like the it's like I've seen him twice. I saw him in Scotland was the first time I saw him, and it was pretty amazing. And that was in 2017. So that was the first time I actually got to see him. And I've been a fan of him for probably since when I like lived in New York, so early 2000s. I heard about him after their first album. But even I saw him in Brooklyn with Nicole last 2 years ago, and it was just, it's a whole nother show. Like there's a full band on stage. They're not trying to do this like behind screens like they used to, and like not show people and have like
Oh, I
cartoons
didn't
on.
think it did that.
I've never seen
Yeah,
that.
so now like they did it for the first little bit, but then I guess they realized it costs a lot of money to do that.
Oh yeah.
So like we're just gonna have real people, and then they just show like music videos on the back and stuff like that.
How similar is the the album? How similar is Demon Days to the first album? Did they divert for their sophomore effort, or was it
A
somewhat
little bit. They expanded on their sound. I think Blur was a huge band, and I think people related a lot of the early Gorilla stuff to maybe some Blur stuff. I do. But the album's got a totally different sound, and I think it blows the first one out of the water for sure.
kind of like the second Matrix did to the first Matrix?
Well, you're wrong.
The only person in the world who thinks that.
Only one who believes that. How
Right, yeah.
how many bands do you think this record has if you were just to throw a number out there?
Man,
What
well,
was the question? Wait, what was the question?
how many oh mans?
Just
Oh.
estimating. I just want a round number. Just
Trying to think. Like now, when I listen to it a lot. So the initial like, oh man, they kind of wear down when you listen to it over and over again. But initially, like the first time, I'd say one or two per song. I'd say it's about 24 for the whole album. It's no 76.
Is that how many bands we had?
It's also based on the listener. You know what I mean? So it's
It also depends on the environment. Like we listened to Demon Days at Woods of Old a couple of years ago, and there was a lot of oh mans.
yeah.
But that's a whole nother listening environment. So
That Sturgill record at Woods of Old, the all mans were just big ones. Like it really felt like you were.
that was my runner. That was my runner-up album, but I didn't want to get into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything with the album that was pretty great. I don't know if I have much more to.
One thing I was going to say about this album, so like I didn't listen to their first album, but they had a couple of singles from that one that were big, and I was like, yeah, it seems good. But yeah, I kind of thought it was a little bit of a gimmicky side project band, which probably a lot of people did. And so this one was the first one that I listened to. I think I started to hear good things about it. And one of the things that really hit me with this album is like the way even in like one song, they can shift gears so quickly and like shift between almost like genres of music within one song and do it very seamlessly. Like it's really impressive. Like the first song I think is Last Living Souls, right?
Yep.
So that one kind of like starts in this place. It kind of sounds like a little bit of a electronic, song. Not necessarily a hip hop song, but it's very electronic at the beginning. And then somewhere in the middle, it switches to this like string section, like taking over.
Yep.
And it's a real crazy change, but somehow it sounds totally natural. It's the kind of thing like as a songwriter and like trying to arrange songs, even like it blows me away because like that's the kind of thing I would like to do, be able to do more of, but it's really difficult to just like change gears like that and you know, and not have it be jarring and like, you know, ruin the song.
And they're very good at doing it in between songs, but then the fact that they, like you just said, they do it in the middle of a song is something else. Like a lot of the transitions from like those last 4 songs on the album are just, it's like a 12-minute long song. If you put them all together, it's seamless, which is really great. And then the live feature of the time I saw them in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center, they ended the concert with the last 3 songs from Demon Days, and it was unbelievable. Just one of those like really cool moments to be there for, which is good.
Yeah.
But yeah,
All right.
that's it.
I think you made your case.
And it's Gorillaz with his.
We're not getting a lot of argument here, I don't think, so far.
I don't know, Mike. Have you ever listened to it?
Controversial one.
Yeah, Mike. Did you ever listen to it or?
No. I'm a huge fan of the first album, but I've never heard the second album, so I will definitely listen to it.
Their first album was something else. That was like.
I liked it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was. I think that's the one with Clint Eastwood.
I wasn't quite sure what was going on. It was like, I think we're all the same age. It was kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with Mr.T.
Yeah.
I remember in the 80s.
Mr.T, the person?
Well, okay, that's. I'm glad you brought that up. In the 80s, I was very confused about what Mr.T was. I knew there was a man named Mr.T, but then there was, but it wasn't like I don't know how to articulate it because I've never said this before, but
there's different instances of him
who was playing a character, but that was also the persona that he was projecting into the world. But then there was a cartoon where he led a team of gymnasts, but then he also was a professional wrestler under the name of Mr. T, but then he also was on the A-Team.
And in Rocky 3.
Starring as Mr. T.
And he was starting the A-Team. He was basically like playing the character of Mr. T, playing a character.
Exactly.
A lot of layers.
I couldn't quite wrap my head around what Mr. T was. And it was the same thing with the Gorillaz. I couldn't quite wrap my head around what was going on here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it took them their first album to try to figure it out. I do have a funny Mr. T story. When I was a kid, I wrote a letter to God to send Mr. T down and beat up my sisters, and I stuck it under my pillow, and my parents found it, and I got in a lot of trouble.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say. I thought this would have been so cute. I thought you were gonna say your parents found it, and then they wrote you a letter back, as if it was from God.
Yeah, that would have been amazing.
That would have been good. No, that was. You can edit that out.
I have a lot of questions. I don't know how far we should go into this.
That has to.
Because I knew Mr. T from the A-Team in the cartoon. I was like, oh, he's a badass. He's great. He could take care of my problems for me. And my sisters at the time, being 6 years old, were my problem.
And you just felt like Mr. T should beat them up, and then your problems would be solved.
Gone. Just never again. Never again.
It's so unfortunate that people sometimes will turn to drugs or will turn to the bottle in an attempt to alleviate their problems when all they need to do is write a letter to
Mr. T. Yeah.
He could solve all of their issues.
Yeah.
All right.
Mike, let's hear your
Yeah, absolutely. And a thing like this, I always tend to go with my gut and I don't think about it. And as soon as I'm presented with the question, I just go with the first thing that I think of. And so this was such an easy pick for me. And then I started thinking about it and I was like, well, wait a minute. And in an odd twist of events, the album that I picked, the band that did that album did another perfect album. Their follow-up album to the album I picked, I would consider another perfect album, which is so and I'm talking 10 out of 10. And so it was so hard for me to decide what album I was gonna pick, and I just decided like 30 minutes before we recorded this show what album I was gonna go with of the two. But I think it's an undisputable perfect 10 out of 10. So my pick is Pearl Jam 10. From start to finish, 10 out of 10. And I thought about it, and Versus is, goddamn, man, Versus is 9.9 out of 10. Oof. It was so close. And just
what can I ask
John,
what would you take points off for Versus? Because I almost feel like Versus is a better album.
Listen, man, it was so close. There's a song on Versus called Blood that I don't like. Other than that, and you know what? It's interesting if you listen to it, and it's like the decision between the two albums was so close, but it's not close at all, if that makes sense, because the songs on 10 are so classic. They're so good. And if you look at the two albums as a whole, like, not knowing it, they're close, but 10 is just in a league of its own, if that makes sense. And like, I realized, and I have in my notes that I was like, I'm going to say a lot of goofy things in this review. Like, Pearl Jam is not my favorite band, and 10 is not my favorite album. And this came out in a time where I was 15 years old, and grunge was exactly the kind of genre that you want to come out when you're 15 because you're angry already. And I think Nirvana, Nevermind, which is probably a topic for another show, but that album changed the face of music forever. And I think Nirvana Nevermind is a better album than 10, but I think 10 is a better album, if that makes sense. And I know how goofy that sounds, and I don't know how to articulate it, but I don't know how to articulate it. Like,
it makes sense to me.
It does. It weirdly makes sense. Like, Nevermind is an album that I would prefer to listen to, and it had more of an impact to me. And I think its imperfections is what makes it that. But in judging a perfect album, I think 10 is better than Nevermind. I don't know how to articulate.
Are you trying to like compare the end result of like production sound, or?
No. I just think all the songs on 10 are better than all of the songs on Nevermind, but I think Nevermind had more of a resonation.
More of an impact?
Better as an album. I don't know, but anyway.
So, can I say something real quick?
If you can make sense of what I'm trying to say. I don't know how to articulate it.
So I'm not sure if I do either, but I actually was considering Nevermind as my pick because, I mean, there's not a bad song on that album. And I would say almost all of them are not just not bad, but they're, great. And then I was revisiting it, and it is still great, but it wasn't resonating with me the way that I thought it would. And I'm not totally sure why. Maybe some of it is just having those songs that become like so ubiquitous or whatever. They're just kind of always somewhere, around on the periphery. Like, Nirvana is just like always kind of there, so you never really get to miss them. Maybe that's it. I don't really know. But Pearl Jam definitely resonates with me emotionally more now than Nirvana did. And so I don't know if that's part of it for you or not, but I would say that.
I think that's a great point. And I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier about getting in it when it came out. I think I was just such an angry kid. And I think Nevermind was a little angrier than 10. So I think maybe that's why I sort of gravitated to that more. But you're saying, you're saying Versus is better than 10. Do you like Versus more?
I do, yes. Partially though, it's because of my experience as a teenager with both albums. I don't know, like, that the songs on Versus are all better than the songs on 10. I don't know if I would even make that argument, but like when 10 came out, that was huge for me. That was, like my favorite album for a while. And so then there's that big thing of like, okay, the follow-up album, what is it going to be? You know, and I remember that feeling, like even as a teenager, like excited and nervous, and like, so when Versus came out, like they took things in a different direction. I feel like it was a lot more raw. Like a lot of it sounded almost like them playing live in the studio. I don't know if they did or not, but it had that feeling and to it. And the songs were also like, there was also, I feel like a lot more of that up and down of like, kind of there's these really intense songs and like angry songs, and then there's these, you know, kind of like prettier, more contemplative songs. And I feel like it was a little more of like an emotional roller coaster than 10 was.
Versus is so good. And again, I have in my notes that I'm going to say a lot of goofy things during this review, but I think I like Versus better than 10, but I have to give 10 the perfect album award over Versus. And I don't know how to articulate it. I can't articulate it, but it's just such an amazing album.
I think the songs on 10 are like a lot more concise. Everything is like Versus, there was like some screwing around on. Right. But that's also what I appreciate about it. But depending on the criteria you're looking at, yeah, I would say that 10 is a tighter collection of solid songs maybe than Versus.
I think
I'm a No Code guy.
Really?
No Code is great.
See, I don't like No Code.
That's
Everything
one of the best.
after Versus, I'm out. Everything after Versus,
Really?
I love the opening of No Code, because it's just like quiet, and then just bam, that second track just was like, oh yeah, by the way, as John said, he pretty much says Eddie Vedder's like, all right, let's just remind him that we're Power Jam, and it just blows out your speakers.
In case you forgot.
It's wild. I think, Mike, you probably don't like Versus as much because you missed the concert that we all drove to. Where they,
That's right.
not that we all went to the concert, but you didn't buy a ticket, so you just went to the bar down the street. But they actually played Versus in full. I've never seen John so happy in my life.
Really?
That whole concert, John was just like,
yeah. So
happy.
We went to see Pearl Jam. It was like a kind of a birthday present that I guess I got for myself to go see Pearl Jam in South Carolina. And Mike and Greg came with me, and Adam as well. But for some reason, we did not get Mike Baby a ticket.
Because he was on the fence. We bought the tickets. He was like, oh, I'm in. I was like, you should have told me this like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. I think I agreed to go on the day of the trip, and so I wasn't able to get a ticket. I think was what it was.
And we thought about that you could still, there were tickets available still, but then like you might not have been able to sit with us. It kind of turned out you probably could have just walked in and stood around with us and it would have been fine. But I had never seen Pearl Jam live after being a fan since I was a teenager. I also had a chance, this is another side story, which maybe isn't worth getting into. I had bought tickets to see Pearl Jam when I was like 18 or 19, but at that time in my life, I was still really involved in this evangelical Christian church. And they had this big push that for like everybody to like cut anything like non-Christian out of their life. And I decided to stop listening to non-Christian music. And
wow.
I didn't go see Pearl Jam, even though I already had the tickets. I got rid of them and didn't go see them. So
where
that
are they playing?
added a layer
Is
to
your
me.
pick for perfect album going to be Striper?
What's that?
Is your pick for perfect album going to be Striper?
Yes. In God we trust by Striper. Actually, when I was younger than that, I wasn't allowed to listen to Striper because they were too edgy, even in the Christian world. Because they wore makeup and stuff, and like they looked like an 80s hair metal band.
They did.
Yeah. But anyway, so I got to see Pearl Jam. It was cathartic, and they played Versus, the entire album, as just part of their set. It wasn't even like they were going on tour being like
the Versus tour.
The Versus tour. They played a 3-hour long set, and part of it was just playing their whole second album unexpectedly. And that really is what put it over the top for me. That was just like, I couldn't have been happier. And you saw
I think at the end of the concert, like they came out for the encore, they did like a 30-minute encore. They turned every light in the arena on and played for 30 minutes with every single light on. It was amazing. It was really, really great.
Yeah. I could be wrong, but I feel like I think they were gradually taking the house lights up over the last hour of the set.
They could have.
Got to the encore, and then they're just like house lights fully on, but we're coming back out to play.
Sure. Yeah, it was
something that I really enjoy when bands do, and Taking Back Sunday did this on I can't remember the name of the album, but it's the one with the panther on it. But one of my favorite things is like in Nevermind, when you'll have your whole album and song number 12 is Something in the Way. Like it kind of deviates from the tone of the whole album. And Pearl Jam did that on Verses with Indifference.
Yeah.
And you guys did that with Nothing at All. That's a cool move. I love that move when bands do that. Joe, you need to do that for your next.
I'm taking
Put
notes.
like a Something in the Way song at the end. And it was featured in the new Batman trailer, that song, Something in the Way. And now
really?
Yeah. And everybody's like, what is this song playing on the trailer? And I was like, this was cool when I was a kid.
Wow.
I haven't seen the new Batman trailer.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Looks great. Looks very dark.
But yeah, I like that move.
Oh, is it the one with like the really dark Riddler? Maybe.
No, it's Penguin, played by Colin Farrell.
I have not seen this trailer.
Anyway, point is.
Yeah, I agree. It is one of my favorite moves. Is like when you've made a great collection of songs, and then the last one you can kind of do something that's a bit of a weird turn from the rest of the album, and and if you do it right, it can really like send you off in the best way possible.
I love it. Yeah. Nothing at All is one of my secret favorite Taking Back Sunday songs. You guys should crush that on your next show.
Thank you. I
actually
really like that one too. I appreciate.
I'm actually shocked with Mike Baby's pick. So I was telling Joe before you guys logged on, I'm like, it's either going to be some shitty hair band from the 80s,
I know.
or some Ghetto Boys album. That was way off.
I'm taking this very
I
seriously.
thought it was going to be Jedi Mind Tricks because you brought it up in the chat recently, and I was like, oh, he just gave away his cards, and I guess Greg said he was wearing the shirt. And I was like, oh, you picked a Gorillaz album, and he goes, no.
Oh my gosh, Greg is wearing a Gorilla shirt. This is like oh man, what's the Kevin Spacey movie? What's the Kevin Spacey movie where he's looking
at Suspects?
Yes, this is like Usual Suspects where Greg is wearing the
just
shirt.
Picking things off the background.
Right. Greg's gonna turn the camera around. It's gonna be all Gorillaz shit. Anyway.
Kaisers. John, I'm very intrigued to hear yours.
All right.
I have ideas, but
I don't think it's gonna be what you think it will be.
it's a good answer.
I went through a bit of a process with this, and like I said, Nirvana's Nevermind was actually the first thing when we talked about this. I'm like, well, that's a perfect album. That's gonna be it. And then, like I said, when I listened to it, it's still great, but it didn't hit me. And then I thought about some other ones. One of my favorite albums, and also a life-changing one, was Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots.
Great album.
By Flaming Lips. And I thought about that one, but and that one still really resonates with me, but I think there's just like a few, just not anything big, but there's a little bit of some screw around moments, I think, like where
that's what they're known for.
Yeah.
It's like, I love the Flaming Lips, but like I thought about using one of their albums for this, but every album there's like a song of just noise. And they're just like
dropping spoons into pans.
Yeah.
And just that.
And like there's not, like Soft Bulletin's pretty great, but still, even with that one, there's one or two songs I'm like, I gotta skip it.
Yeah. So, and then I revisited another one that it was around the same time as the Flaming Lips album, and so my choice that I ultimately landed on was Yankee Hotel Foxtrot by Wilco. So I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with Wilco or the album, but they had been around for a while before I heard them at this point. I double check my facts. I think the album came out in 2003.
Yankee Hotel Foxtrot?
I was totally, actually 2001. Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. And they had a few albums before this, and I had never really listened to them. But they kind of started out a little bit like kind of an alt country band, like in the mid 90s, like before that was that much of a thing, or, before it was popular. And then they kind of gradually got a little more experimental and a little more, just kind of reaching outside those boundaries of where they had started. And this one, they really just kind of went all out on, I think, like a bit of just experimenting and kind of like strange arrangements and sounds and noises kind of incorporated into these sort of melodic alt country type songs, and then some like straightforward, just like really solid songs. But the entire album, like when you take it as a whole, when you sit there with it from the beginning to the end, it really is a journey, and it really covers a lot of ground musically and sonically, and it manages to do it seamlessly. Like it's you almost don't notice it as you listen, but there is throughout the album a lot of different types of songs and a lot of variation of styles and genres, and they make it all work in a way that you don't even really think about it. And in addition to that, it's also just extremely moving, like on an emotional level, and then they have these lighter moments as well, and that's a big thing. I didn't really say that when I was talking at the beginning about a perfect album, but I think you do need that, like the highs and lows emotionally, not just stylistically. And so there's these really heavy songs that are it could almost be depressing. I don't know if I think I have a high tolerance for depressing songs, so I don't know if I would call them depressing. They don't make me feel sad, but they have then I have a song called Heavy Metal Drummer on it, and it's this upbeat song, and it's about going to see metal bands when you're a teenager or like a little bit older, and this girl he's going to see the shows with, like, loves all the drummers for these heavy metal bands, and like
Lars Ulrich. We're talking a Lars Ulrich.
A Lars Ulrich type, your Tommy Lees, They kind of make it seem like in the song, though, it's probably more like local heavy metal bands. It seems a little more like that, and then kind of also like the song is about like kind of missing those days of being young and like getting stoned and going to see like a metal band, like something that you just never going to do again as a grown adult, and you're never going to enjoy that anymore. Or well, maybe not.
Why not?
Listen, the day is young. I might do that later tonight.
Yeah, well, you know what? You can. Just
wear your mask.
But it's again it's a pretty lighthearted, fun song, and they have a few others, where there's these moments, these glimpses of sort of real like hope and just lightheartedness, and then these moments that are, you know, really kind of dark. And then again, in addition to that, every single song on the album is great. Like when I was re-listening to it, it had been a couple of years. I was kind of bracing myself for like, oh, one of these might be kind of missing the mark. It had been a while, so I was like, the next song would come on and be like, ooh, this might be the one where I have to deduct a point, and it never happened. Every single song that came on from the first to the last, just amazing. It fit every criteria that I had for a perfect album.
That's awesome. I remember Wilco was one of those bands where I would go to Best Buy and they always have a CD, like there would be like a top sellers rack, and Wilco was always on there. And I was always like, I need to check this band out. And I never did. That was one of those bands that I should have checked out.
Yeah.
And Matthew Sweet. Those were the two in that rack. It was always Everclear and Bush and Wilco and Matthew Sweet. And I bought the Everclear album, which I loved, and the Bush album, which was amazing. But I never got the Wilco album or the Matthew Sweet album. And the Jayhawks was always in there too. But that might just be a Southern thing.
Jayhawks are pretty good.
The stuff I know about Wilco is that I know, like, I've been to a handful of Bonnaroos, and every year I've been there, they've been there. And also, they were very early in the Bonnaroo years, so they were in there with like the Fish and the Dave Matthews Band and all
Ice Cube.
John Nolan favorites, because I know John Nolan.
Does Wilco have a father and son in the band? Isn't it like a father and son, or at least on one album?
You're thinking of Van Halen. I think you're thinking of Van Halen.
I don't know if his son is in the band now, but I know the singer's son is a drummer and he has recorded music with him.
Okay.
I think it might. I know he did a solo album. Jeff Tweedy is the singer of Wilco, and he did have his son play drums on it. Oh, look at that cat! But I don't know if he plays with Wilco or not. That could have been a development in the past few years that I was not aware of.
I know their album Jesus, etc. is a big.
That was a single from.
A single? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's one of the songs on this album.
Oh, okay.
They may have put it out as like one of those, like a single with a few B-sides or something, or made a mini
mystery
EP on it or something.
Because whenever I see Wilco anywhere, like online, it's always followed by like Jesus, etc. or all that. So I figured that was. I don't know much about them. So
yeah,
I
found out about Wilco through when American football. Then I heard Owen, and then I think he covers a Wilco song, and that's how I found out about Wilco. I'm trying to remember, it was a while ago.
Wilco also comes up a lot on my Spotify, like on the daily mix type thing.
Right.
I did just cancel Spotify and went to Apple Music.
Oh yeah.
So that's cool.
They take care of the artists better.
That's what your pal Adam says.
Yeah, he's told me that. I believe him. He knows his stuff.
Yeah.
So a weird thing about Wilco though is that so yeah, like I said, this album came out in 2001, and they've moved on from the sound of this album, and they put out a really weird experimental album after this one, and then they sort of like leveled out, and they got this guitar player who's like insane. He's like one of the best guitar players in the world. I think like literally if there was a guitar playing competition, this guy would win it.
All Valley under 18 guitar championships.
Yeah. So then they kind of started to move into a little more of a dad rock phase after this, and a lot of like it getting a little bit like jammy. It kind of makes sense they would be in the Bonnaroo world, and I like a lot of that stuff, but it doesn't have the weight to it to me that Yankee Hotel Foxtrot has, and yeah, this album is definitely like a moment too. You can kind of feel it. I think especially for Jeff Tweedy, the singer, it was like a real heavy time for him. There's actually a documentary about this album too, which is amazing. I highly recommend checking it out. It's called I Am Trying to Break Your Heart. And they made this album. They'd been on Warner Brothers, I think, for 2 or 3 albums before this. And they turned this one in, and it was too weird, I think, basically, for a lot of the suits, so to speak, over there at Warner Brothers. And they rejected the album. They actually had told them they had to go in and make a new album, basically, and they said no, and they got dropped. And then they were so confident in the album, they kept just shopping it to new labels. Like somehow Warner Brothers let them keep the record, so they had it, they owned it,
Nice.
and pushed through and kept shopping it. They ended up getting signed by a subsidiary of Warner Brothers. So basically, Warner gave them their album back, and then another part of Warner Brothers Records paid them to release it on their label. And then it ended up being their biggest album to date.
Oh.
So it's one of those stories, which I like, I like that type of story.
They're still active though, right?
Yeah, very much so.
Does Jeff Tweedy do any solo stuff, or is he just?
Yeah, he has at least one album under his own name, and like I said, I think that was the one his son played drums on.
Nice. I could have sworn you were going to go Radiohead or Beatles. But...
So this.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna go Beatles, man. It's hard not to go with Beatles. I'm sure they have a ton of perfect albums that I'm just not familiar with.
Yeah, so some of the thing with the Beatles to me is I felt like it may be too cliche.
Yeah, right. One of my runner-ups was "License to Ill" by the Beastie Boys. I was so.
Mine was Paul's Boutique. I had runners, but I couldn't do it.
Beastie Boys' "License to Ill" is the one album that, gun to my head, I could sing word for word, top to bottom, the entire album. Mm-hmm. Anyway,
my runner-up was Rilo Kiley, More Adventurous.
Who you say, Kylo Ren?
No, Rilo Kiley.
Okay. Okay. I didn't know Kylo Ren had an album. Greg doesn't know. That's a Star Wars man. Yeah. Kylo Ren is a spaceman.
I get it now.
Never seen any Star Wars movies.
No. But awesome. I did. What steered you from a Radiohead album?
So I sat down with OK Computer.
You okay?
No, I had a joke.
Oh,
inappropriate. Okay. John, please continue.
Well, thank you for censoring yourself.
You're welcome.
So, Radiohead was. I was almost going to go with OK Computer. It's an amazing album and really probably influenced me and my thinking and my, personality a lot more than this Wilco album. But there are a couple of songs on OK Computer, maybe really only, I don't know, it might only be one or where I'm sort of it's not bad, but it's enough to, I think, like someone said before, enough to give it a 9 out of 10, maybe
right.
It's 10 out of 10. And then, like Kid A was huge for me, but it's a difficult listen, it's a great album, one of my favorites of all time, but I think you got to put in some work when you're listening to Kid A. You got to be willing to go along with them on it. It's not like you just listen to it and say, you don't have like the what was your measurement, Joe?
Oh man.
Every time
man.
Oh man.
Yeah, like with Kid A, I feel like there's a lot of oh man moments, but there's also a lot of huh? Moments.
Moments. Okay, we can use that as a rating system too.
That's another. Yeah, that's a good rating.
HEH question mark.
Yeah. Huh?
Okay, computer is what I say to my computer anytime it has an old, outdated opinion. I just go, okay, computer. I do a meme of it. I just say, okay, computer. Because like, okay, boomer. No?
Yeah.
And,
Oh, is that what you're
Computer.
going for?
yeah, that's what I was trying to, no.
John, that joke was about that's at that hour and
That was an A+. That was a perfect joke. That was a 10 out of
The perfect joke.
10. much like
Ends in that
Pearl
joke.
Jam's 10.
for John's editing process, that's at about an hour and 7 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, good to know. Good to know.
All right, guys.
Awesome. Should we tease the next
Okay,
episode?
computer.
I think we should.
Are we gonna do some of the options we had were, I know we were gonna do perfect, or not perfect, but best discography.
Yeah, I think we had talked about perfect catalog, which
Perfect catalog, yeah. That could be a good discussion.
I think we should jump off from perfect album to perfect catalog,
Mm-hmm. I think
and
that
that'll
would
be
be a great.
interesting.
That's a teaser if I ever heard one.
Yeah, this is gonna bring people running back next week. All right,
Awesome.
well,
Cool.
good
Great
work.
idea, John. Good job, John and
Man,
Mike.
enjoyed it. Thank you
This
for
was
having
fun.
me.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you guys for doing this.
I look forward to doing it next week.
Yeah, me too. Let's
Yeah, that'd
keep
be
this
great.
going.
Cool.
Good times, guys.
All right, guys.
See ya.
All right.
Bye.
Bye now.